So this past weekend we've been sitting sesshin. Sesshin is a Zen. I hesitate to call it a retreat because there's certain images in the mind that come when you think of the word retreat, and it's hard work and it takes some dedication. The word sesshin means to touch the heart. I remember my teacher telling me one time when I was on this path early on, she said when she first started to practice and do sesshin like this, and then to practice in a Zen temple with other priests, she said her mantra that kept her going was, "I'm going home tomorrow, I'll stay one more day." That was her mantra. So, obviously it wasn't an easy thing for her to do. And I don't think it's easy for any of us. If it is easy, then we're not touching the heart, which is what sesshin means. She would say that the only reason I kept doing it was because the pain in my heart was greater than the pain in my knees. I don't recommend us doing zazen in order to experience leg pain. She would also say that what you do with your legs is secondary to what you do with your back. But I think to return to the heart is what sesshin is about. And I would say for all of us, we have something in our heart that calls us here. There's something there. I don't want to give it a name, but there's something there that we don't know what to call it, and yet we feel the need to investigate it. There's something in our heart, maybe not our physical heart, but our spiritual heart or our symbolic heart, something inside of us recognizes some quality that's off in some way in us. There's something missing. And so we come to investigate, like, what is that? What is that? So today I want to talk about Zazen and tie it in loosely with the poem that we've been looking at called Faith, Verses on the Faith Mind. So there's 3 different translations of these verses on the faith mind that I looked at. And of course, the one from Nebraska Zen Center is one of them. One of them that I looked at was from Andy Ferguson, who wrote it. Does anybody know who that is? You heard of him?
Yeah, I went to try with it.
Yeah. Oh, you did? Okay. Yeah, his translation, I don't know if he translated it or somebody else, but his translation says, true faith is upright. That's part of the faith, the verses in the faith mind. True faith is upright. I came across that, I was like, wait a minute. I don't know what the Chinese character is for that, because, and maybe I'll find out later, but the Nebraska Zen Center version says, doubts and irresolutions vanish and life in true faith is possible. So one version says true faith is upright. The other version says life in true faith is possible. The third version is from Shaoshan Temple, and it goes, doubts and confusions disappear, which is similar to the Nebraska Zen Center version. Doubts and irresolutions vanish. And Shaoshan's goes, and so true faith pervades our life. True faith pervades our life. So the Ferguson translation is very different. True faith is upright. You compare that line for line. True faith is upright versus true faith pervades our life versus true faith is possible. Which version is it? Maybe we don't need to know the right one. I don't know if there is a correct one. But it's fascinating when we look at a Chinese poem and it gets translated and you have multiple versions of it. And it's helpful to get some, but I am attracted to this particular translation that true faith is upright. What does that mean? So today I wanna think about this Zazen. And a lot of what I shared today is also indebted to Fujita Isho Roshi. He is one of the teachers that I really, really admire. He was invited to our Zendo on a couple of occasions and gave talks on Zazen, and he just has a very innovative way of thinking about Zazen that I think maybe we can benefit from. So he says, in one of his writings, he says, this is Fujita Isho, he says, I have been wandering in the world of Zazen for about 15 years. This was in 1999 or 1998. I have been wandering in the world of Zazen for about 15 years. Although I practice it myself, recommend it and teach it to others, I still ask, what is Zazen? Repeatedly. I still ask, what is Zazen? Repeatedly. I think that is just such a, and I would bet he'd still be asking that question. And this is another 23 years later, 25 years later. Right? What is Zazen? We inevitably create a concept of what Zazen is the moment we come to the Zen Center, the moment we think about coming to the Zen Center. We have this idea of what Zazen is. Right? So what if we were to turn it around and say, I have this something, I know there's something here that I don't quite understand, and I want to investigate it. Right? There's something that I want to investigate. And then we come to, then this is the place to do that, as opposed to creating an image in our mind of what we're doing and then trying to conform to that image with our body. That's what we often do. And so we think that Zazen looks a certain way, that we have to have our legs crossed, we have to sit on the floor, our back needs to be straight, and then we conform our body to that image of Zazen. And it's really a dualistic way of thinking about Zazen. It's a dualism. Like as soon as we sit down and then we think, okay, I got to get my back straight and then lengthen up, we've already created dualism in our mind. So how do we do Zazen then? If you certainly get instructions too. You get instructions that say sit upright or be upright. And so in our minds, upright means not slouching. And then we might lengthen up. But as soon as we go like this, we're forcing our body into perhaps an unnatural posture. And we can't sustain that kind of a practice. It's just not sustainable. So I'm just going to give some examples of how Zazen has been described by Dogen. With Fujita Isho is saying, he's suggesting that Zazen is an unpenetrated koan. Zazen itself is a koan. So that really opens the gate for it. Yeah. So let's give some examples of Zazen's nature. Is Japanese term yusui, subtle and elusive. When we sit for an extended time, like we've been doing this weekend, you start to catch glimpses of that. We refine it's like our attention gets refined. Our attention itself gets more subtle. Yeah. And Zazen slips away. the ideas we have of Zazen are going to slip away because we can't maintain those postures, right? That be upright, sit cross-legged on the floor. There's too much. There's already, so what we're doing with Zazen is we don't need to create pain in the body through Zazen. That's often though what we think we need to do. Oh, I sit and it's like self-punishment. Rather, when we're sitting Zazen, pain comes to us because we've been hiding from it in some way because we have myriads of distractions available to us. There's myriads of things distracting us from our own suffering. And so that something inside of us emerges in saying, like, usually what we do, it's so elusive. What we usually do is, let me go get a drink, or let me turn on the TV, or let me go for a run, or you name your particular escape mechanism. And they're important to have some escape mechanisms. We need them. If we think we have to be here and we're forced to do this, then it's not going to work either. It has to be done by choice. We have to want to be here. Not that we have to like to be here, but we choose to be here. We choose to be here. How you feel about it is really not as important as just you're deciding, you're making the decision to sit with that big question mark of what is this? You're making that decision. Nobody's forcing you to be here. And if you decide to leave, that's okay too. Maybe maybe it's too much. But what I'm trying to do is create a kind of framework for thinking about this question mark that we're sitting with. So let's look at some names for Zazen. Shikantaza is one. Shikantaza. Shikan, the word shikan means just or solely. And ta, or taza, ta itself means to hit. But when you put it with za, which means sitting, means strong or pure sitting. Nothing but sitting. Nothing but sitting. So Dogen says totally resolute and immovable sitting. Right? Totally resolute. There's a strong resolve there to do nothing except for sit, which is really quite difficult because as soon as we sit, if we're not doing anything but sitting, then our mind is wandering. It's thinking about things. I'm sure. I know that my mind does. And then there's little moments here and there during the sesshin where you realize, oh, your mind is creating a picture of where you are, and then you just wake up and like, wait a minute, I am just sitting. I'm only sitting here. That's all I'm doing. Right? That's it. Another descriptor for Zazen is lotus in the fire. Lotus doesn't last very long in a fire, in a cauldron. It just burns up. So that's Zazen too. And if you think about the vastness of space and time and the instant of our life, we are really a lotus in the fire. And this moment it seems like a long time sometimes, but that's a human way of measuring the mind. And the Buddha's way of measuring time is much vaster. We have to ask the question, whose measuring stick are we using here? If we're using human society's measuring stick for time, it's very small. The Buddha's measuring stick it's huge measuring stick. And we're just here for just a split second. Really, we're just here for a split second. No one can tell you. Okay, here's another descriptor. or this was something that I experienced early on. For me, Zazen is sitting down next to a teacher, sitting down next to my teacher. When I first did that, something changed. It wasn't me. It wasn't something that I did purposely. Something shifted for me. That's the arising of faith right there. Like, I'm going to check out this teacher. That's all I was thinking. I'm going to go check out this teacher. This was in 1994. And I met her. She was hunched over, puffing up zapus, putting them in a circle in the chapel on the college campus. And she said, "Hi, my name's Diane, like Diane to meet you." And she, she sat down, and I was just blown away by the way that she sat, by the way, the Buddha says he was on a walk. When we say the Buddha's on a walk, he was practicing walking. And when the Buddha walks, the Buddha really walks. Right? When the Buddha sits, the Buddha really sits. And this farmer saw him walking and said, "What do you do? You know what, you beggars just bother me. What do you do all day?" And the Buddha said something that made him even angrier. He said, "I sit, I walk, I stand, and I lie down." And the farmer thought, he said, "Doesn't everybody do that? What makes you so special?" And the Buddha said, "When I sit, I know that I am sitting. When I walk, I know that I am walking." That's the difference. We sit and we know that it's hitting. I like that word, taza, right? Taza means to hit zazen. When you're really sitting, you're not thinking about something else. You're sitting. It's thorough-minded sitting. And so when you witness somebody who's been practicing that for a while, and you sit down next to them, you're like, "Wait a minute, wow, I'm just really sitting." You get to borrow their practice. The practice is for you. It's not for you personally. It's other people's practice is for you. Your practice is for others. That's how it works. Your practice is not for yourself. Your practice is for others, and other people's practice is for you. And that's why we sit together. There's something that happens there. Even if you think, "Oh, I'm not doing this right." Well, you don't have to. You're doing it for other people. You don't have to worry about doing it right. Just absorb the benefits from the other people in the room. That's all we have to do. And that's the gift of sitting together. You don't get anything out of it unless you're sitting with other people, really. Or if you're by yourself, then light a stick of incense or something, or a candle, and have the Buddha there with you, and really feel the presence of the Buddha there. That the Buddha's there. Or if you can't, you don't have to literally say, "Oh, the Buddha's there." Just use your imagination. Have the presence of the Buddha sitting with you. Right? We should practice as though, my teacher would say, we should practice as though Dogen were sitting zazen behind a soji screen in the next room. Yeah. The eyes are always watching. We're always being watched. Now that sounds, if you're OCD, you're in trouble. But coming back to the heart, and the Buddha did this because he was feeling pain. And the reason we can connect with the Buddha is because the Buddha feels pain. And that's why he did what he did. That's why he sought after enlightenment, because of his own pain in the heart. Because the Buddha feels pain, we can connect with him. And actually, that's what we're doing when we're doing sesshin, is we're connecting in a real way to the pain that we're feeling in our own heart, symbolic heart, or physical heart. We're connecting to the pain in our heart. It emerges not because of zazen, but zazen illuminates it. When we do sesshin, it really illuminates the pain that is always there, but we're often so distracted, or we purposely distract ourselves and we don't even know it. It's very, very subtle. And Zazen, this subtle yusu, subtle and elusive. Zazen's nature is subtle and elusive. If we think we know what Zazen is, it's a little bit more subtle than perhaps you think. Okay, another word for Zazen. Kika onza. Kika onza means returning home and sitting in peace. Returning home and sitting in peace. Yesterday we had a little break, and so I wanted to call my wife and see my son, because I usually do that in the evenings, and I wanted to establish that connection. And I saw the kitchen. Did FaceTime for just a few minutes, and I saw the kitchen that my wife was sitting in, and then my son was there, and I thought, oh, there's something that it pulled on my heart. That's why we try not to, we minimize the use of digital devices, but you can't avoid that either. I saw the kitchen, and something woke up in me, oh, that'd be a nice place to be right now. I saw the curtains in the sink where I usually stand, and I saw my son, and he was smiling, and that'd be a really, So desire, you can't avoid that. So then I go back into Zendo, and okay, yeah, there it is. If I were to go there, don't think that it would solve it. I would still have that. And then I would think, oh, I'd love to be in. Then I'd see another teacher at Nebraska Zen Center giving a talk and be like, I wish I was there. So it just switches. We think we got it, and if I just do that, and that's right. So I just be upright. Okay, well, and then I go upright, and then that doesn't solve it either, right? You think you're going to find some method. Oh, if I do this, right? If this, then that, right? If this, I'll get that. As soon as you get that, you become dissatisfied. Returning home and sitting in peace. In this moment, it's saying you don't have to go someplace. Feel that big question mark there. Feel it. All right. This being upright. Faith is being upright. I've been playing around with this one thought in my mind the past few weeks, that upright posture gives birth to concentration. When we are upright, concentration is born. The two things happen simultaneously. Dogen says in Fukan Zazengi, he says, dullness and distraction are completely struck aside. I always had a big question about that. Oftentimes when I sit zazen, I feel dull and I feel distracted. And so he's saying dullness, what does he mean? And then I realized, wait a minute, if I were to go from laying down and sleeping to, when we were sitting overnight here, sleeping, and then, oh God, I'm awake, tired, groggy, and then you come to your cushion, sitting upright, dropping off the thoughts. Yeah, okay, I can see concentration being born. Another word for zazen. So we've got shikantaza, lotus in the fire, kika onza, shoshin tanza. Shoshin tanza. Shoshin. Sho means correct, and shin means body. Literally, that's what that means. Correct body. It could mean correct posture, or right posture. The word tan means proper, correct, straight, but it could also mean impartial, or fine-featured, or even the word handsome.
I have a question. So sheen, Nona talked about sheen could mean heart or mind, that they have the same meaning. And then you talked about like your name, it means faith, so it depends on the character. So I have a question then about sheen. Is the character heart and mind, is that one character and faith is another character? That's a sheen, is that how that works?
That's right, yeah. And the sheen of the one that I just mentioned, Shoshin, is a third character.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, there's several sheens.
Okay.
So you got to know the character in order to understand.
Like two could be two, or two could be also, or two could be, yeah.
What do you mean?
In English.
Oh, right, exactly. Two, the word two. Yes, two could be the number two. Two could mean also. Two could mean a direction that you're going. Yeah, depending on the context in that case. In this case, it depends on the character, but they're all. So you need to look at it to know what it is. So Shoshin, correct body. Tanza, and za is sitting. It's the same za as in zazen, but tanza, tans, proper, correct, straight, impartial, fine-featured, handsome. Right. When you see somebody sitting in shikantaza or shoshin tanza, it's very alluring. It's extraordinarily alluring when you see somebody really like become a drop in the ocean, or I don't know. That's been my experience with that. Like, oh wow. Or even just seeing somebody from a distance, or a group of people sitting in a room. What is going on there? Another way of talking about shikantaza is just sitting. One teacher, Hararaseke Roshi, he actually talks about grinding up the just in just sitting. As soon as you say the word just, you think, oh, I'm just sitting. But he says you got to grind up that just and do za, sit. And don't think about other words connected to it, just za. And that can be a very, very deep experience of thorough-minded sitting. Okay, another one, gotsuza. That gotsuza means sitting immovable like a bold mountain. Sitting immovable. So these words are all words that Dogen uses to describe this big question mark. And we kind of circle around the word zazen, but gotsuza, pika onza, shikantaza, lotus in the fire, upright posture, shoshin tanza. These are all words, descriptors that Dogen used for what it is we're doing, to try to get at it. It's, first of all, a holistic body posture, not a state of mind. It's holistic body posture, not a state of mind. So let's contrast this. There's other forms of meditation out there, as you know. There's nothing wrong. I'm not trying to make one better than the other, but just to differentiate a little bit. So in other forms of meditation, you might find that you're asked to sit in a particular posture. The instructions given are to sit in a particular posture and then practice a particular method. These are Buddhist forms of meditation, by the way. All right. Maybe you count your breaths, maybe you do a visualization, maybe you study a koan, maybe there's chanting or focus on something. So the body is the container and the mind is the content, and meditation becomes a kind of a mental exercise. So zazen is different from that. Zazen is this correct posture. What I'm trying to get at is correct posture. It's correct posture plus zero. This is Fujita Isho says. It's correct posture plus zero. People always ask, like, what do I do next? This is the practice. I mean, you could count your breaths. And my teacher taught that. He said, you count your breath. Especially if you're just starting out. People want to know, okay, what do I do next? We've already dualized the practice when we ask that question, and it's okay. It's okay to ask that question and even to start out like that. But what happens during sessing is you find that you just can't hold on to that method. That method is gonna not work when you have completely immersed, been submerged in Zazen for a long period of time. That method's not going to work. And then you're faced with that big question mark, right? The heart, in the heart. So, true faith is upright. True faith is upright. As soon as I say the upright, I just want to go like this. But here's the thing we can, and I'll kind of close here shortly, but how about we check in, when we approach sitting, as we're approaching sitting, notice the tendency to look for the correct posture. Notice that tendency. That in itself, we're already off base. But this is faith and mind is saying the same thing. As soon as you look for it, you're off. Right? So what if we, as we approach, I'm going to use the right language here, as we approach sitting down, we take notice of our body. And when you hear the word upright, notice the desire to change something about your posture, and don't do it. Right? Just notice that there may be some sensation there in the body that wants you to direct your muscles upwards, but don't do it immediately. Think about softening. Think about softening, letting go, releasing the shoulders, the neck. The body will move by itself without your direction. The more you can get your mind out of the direction and allow the body-mind together as a whole move. It's just like at nighttime, the koan says, Avalokiteshvara is like the compassion is like reaching for the pillow at night. There's no thought there involved. It's just like, this is what the body's doing. And in the same way, your body will guide you in Zazen. If you let go, as soon as you desire to change something about your posture, you're already, if you try to do it, you're going to be so disappointed. So just sit there and let the body do it, right? What we're doing is finding the right gravitational thing there, that gravitational pull down and the resistance to it, so that we're balanced, right? We're balanced. The whole body is soft. And that's what we're looking. That's what we're just like a child is not directing its body. A baby is not directing. I should say a baby is not directing its body. And somehow this amazing thing happens where the child first of all learns to lift its head. Remember that, right? When you see the baby's like, oh look. He or she lifted their head up. Wow. Right? They're going against gravity there. And then the rollover comes next. And eventually they're able to sit up without support. They're not thinking, I've got to sit upright. They're just like totally plumb with the pull of gravity. Gravity is keeping them up, and they're totally in alignment with gravity. They're not thinking about that. So check out little babies if you have a nephew or a niece or little babies there, and watch them. They learn from them. Once we become teenagers, we start thinking about it too much, and we're already, we get our mind involved. So we gotta learn from the ones that don't think as much as we do. And just look at their body, right? Their ability to be upright, they're just amazing. All right, as are you. Take good care of your bodies and keep listening to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
The many beings are numberless, vowing to carry them across.
The many beings are numberless, vowing to carry them across.
Greed, anger, and ignorance rise endlessly, vowing to cut off the mind road.
Greed, anger, and ignorance rise endlessly, vowing to cut off the mind road.
Dharma gates are countless, vowing to wake to them all.
Dharma gates are countless, vowing to wake to them all.
Buddha's way is all embracing, vowing to follow through.
Buddha's way is all embracing, vowing to follow through.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Daishin.
Thank you. Thanks everybody online there. Joran and John
That's
and
Matt.
Matt. Tara?
Yeah.
All right. Do we have time for questions or is that, or we just go right into how the
I
schedule's
think,
up?
I think we just go right into.
Go right into Zazen. All right, well,
Into
if-
Kinhin.
If anybody has any questions, feel free to email, we'll have a conversation and we'll return. Okay.